Hey everybody out in YouTube land, my name is Mike and I love guitars. And unsurprisingly, this episode of the We Love Guitars podcast ran a little long. Now, if you've seen any previous episodes of the We Love Guitars podcast, that shouldn't be any kind of surprise. But I've decided to go ahead and cut this episode into two parts so that I'm not boring people to tears listening to us talk for 2 hours straight. Hopefully, 2 1-hour chunks will be much easier to digest than a single 2-hour chunk. So without further ado, let's get to part one. Hey everybody out in YouTube land, my name is Mike and I love guitars. Welcome to another episode of the We Love Guitars podcast. Today I have Mr. Joel Pohorence here and he is with the band Shinoak in Southeast Texas.
Yep.
So it's one of those, like, I don't think we've ever actually met in person.
I don't believe so.
Like, we got a bunch of mutual friends and, mutual guitar buddies and we just kind of like connected on Facebook and started, drooling over each other's guitars and just kind of went from there.
That's fair. A couple times I actually almost got to come jam with you guys for a little Ugly Tribe stuff whenever you needed a bass player, but I've always had to work. I'm probably one of the biggest Ugly Tribe fans right now anyway. So
you would be one of the only Ugly Tribe fans, but we appreciate it for sure.
Yeah, man. I would love to come jam on some of that stuff. It's awesome. Like, I was watching a YouTube video of it today, ironically. So
nice. Yeah. Well, I think the last time I went down to Southeast Texas and had like an Ugly Tribe jam weekend is like the last time when you couldn't make it. So, yeah, we haven't done it in a while. I've been thinking about that too. It's getting about time to make that happen again. So, but yes, you have a bevy of guitars there behind you. I know we've talked about it before. And just a kind of funny side note, I have that Hughes and Kettner Tubemeister 18 that I got from Shelby, who got from Bill, that used to be yours.
Yep. Yes, sir.
And I haven't done a video yet, but I have Bill's Paul Reed Smith that also used to be yours. You and Bill are kind of similar in that you guys seem to have like kind of a constant rotation of guitars coming in and out.
Yeah, and I ironically behind me here, the 335. That's Beatrice. That's Bill's old 335, and then that SG, the classic right there. That's the one we did a video on.
Oh wow! There you go. Yeah, that's awesome. And you have. I feel like you have more like expensive guitars. I have a lot of guitars, but I don't have many like expensive, like high-end quote unquote guitars.
Sure.
And I'm more of a hoarder. I just like, I see stuff in a pawn shop and that's what I was talking to Jason in the last episode. He was asking me like, well, what are you on the hunt for next? Like, honestly, I'm such a pawn shop guy. It's just whatever catches my eye in a pawn shop. I'm like, ooh, that's cool. Let's get that.
Man, for me, it's like I'll get an idea of like something I just want randomly, and then as soon as I go look on Reverb, it's like whatever is catching on right now and more expensive than it was 2 weeks ago. But no, I mean, primarily, man, I'm a very Gibson guy, and I've always been that way. I've got a few bolt-on neck stuff, and but all this behind me, this is years and years of trades and upgrading and flip-flopping and this and that. And it's just been, a long time in the making for all this stuff. And, my custom shop stuff, I've actually had it for the longest at all this. I do flip flop quite a bit, like Bill, and with Bill. That's how I got the SG. Yeah, man. I mean, it's always been something I've dug. It's probably because my dad was a musician, and he was very much so into Gibson stuff. And his favorite guitar ever, he liked Juniors and old Melody Makers and SG. So that's kind of where it came from for me personally, with the Gibson stuff. I just like how they play too.
I get it. It's kind of funny. I don't know if I ever mentioned this on the podcast before, but my dad's middle name was Gibson.
Oh, nice.
So that's it's one of those things that's just, it was just always in the head. And he was a big fan of Gibson guitars. And so, I don't remember exactly the first, I don't remember who it was, the first time I saw a Les Paul and was like, oh, that's the guitar. But I remember from a pretty early age realizing I had a Charvel guitar poster on my wall in the early mid 90s as a teenager. And it had all the models that they had on that year's releases. And, and that was cool. And I liked the shredder guitars, but there was something about the Les Paul. And the first time I remember kind of being mesmerized by Les Paul, and I don't know if this was I don't know, I can't remember if this was it, but the first one that I remember kind of really was the Zakk Wylde Bullseye Les Paul.
Yep.
And it's just after that, man, it was, and I still love all kinds of guitars, but Les Pauls will always have a special place in my heart.
Sure. I mean, for me, with the Les Pauls, because my dad always had Zeppelin going, always.
Yeah.
But that was Jimmy Page, and that was it for me. And then when I started playing guitar, early '90s, everyone was playing a Strat because one of my first CDs was Nevermind. And Cobain had it. You saw some of the stuff with him with that, and a lot of the early '90s stuff was done pretty much on Strat on MTV. So it was I want one of those.
Yeah. And Strats were much more financially accessible at that point.
Oh, dude, yeah.
These days, Fender charges as much as Gibson does for their guitars, but back then, you could get a USA Strat for $500, and brand new, and you get, or I think the very first brand new guitar I ever bought was a Les Paul Studio back around 96 that I think I paid $800 for it. I traded a couple of guitars for it, but it was $800 was the price tag. So it's, it's funny now you look at how much guitars cost then versus how much they cost now. And like I said, the Strats were more accessible, and I think there's great guitars. They're not quite as financially accessible these days as they were back then.
Right. Yeah. My very first guitar was a Harmony Strat style. I think I bought it at a flea market in Vestal, New York for $50, something like that, 40, $50. Then I got a made in Mexico. It was a Sunburst. And I want to say we got that one probably sub $200. And of course you're talking 94, 95. Then my main, when I first got my first American USA 89 Strat, I think we paid $450 for this at the music store. Traded in a BC Rich Warlock, New Jersey series, and the Mexican Strat for this one. funny story about this. This one's lovingly called Blue, obviously, for obvious reasons, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah,
uh, I traded my very first trade ever, besides to the music store for that one. Was to my buddy who had a '96 Les Paul Gem series. That was the one with the P90s.
yeah,
And I had that guitar from probably '97 until I moved down here in '01. I ended up
yeah,
trading it in, I think, for another Strat or something. There's no telling what I did back then. But when my dad had passed away in 2005, my buddy still had the Blue Strat, and
yeah,
he sent it down to me. So, so I could have it back. So it was from my dad. I mean, my dad used to play this guitar. It's got a cigarette burn from him with a cigarette up on the headstock and all that stuff.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, my buddy Scott sent it back to me, and that '96 Les Paul Gem pops up for sale every now and then on Craigslist Houston. It's in Baytown. The last time I saw it,
Wow.
and I keep missing it. Every time I go to hit the guy up, he doesn't respond, and then it falls off, and then it comes back. So I will get that again
Yeah,
one of these days, and I'm going to send it back up to my buddy. So we'll swap back officially.
yeah, yeah. I will say, like, one thing that's interesting, one difference, I guess I'll say, between you and Bill is that at least with you're swapping and everything, like you're trading to like upgrade and like trade up, trade up, trade up. Bill just like he buys stuff. Oh, this is the best thing ever, and then like 6 months later, he's like, oh no, that over there is the best thing ever. And
Yeah.
he's a little more like guitar ADD. And like I said, you're more of the always looking to trade up kind of thing. So
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and that's just that's how I got all the custom shop stuff really behind me. I think I paid very good prices for the two that I purchased behind, which is my R7 and the 61 SG VOS over there. I got those for crazy deals on Reverb, and the 61, man, the SG is one of my main stage guitars I use right now. And it's just phenomenal, man. It doesn't go out of tune even with the Lear. I mean, I'm not dive bombing or anything crazy like that, but for little trem swells and stuff like that, I mean, it's just a phenomenal guitar. So it's
awesome.
definitely one of my favorite ones.
Well, so your band Shinoak.
Yep.
And am I pronouncing that correctly? Shinoak?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You said it is a cover band.
Yeah, and we're writing some original stuff,
Okay.
and kind of mixing it in here and there. But yeah, it's like we're country meets rock, a little bit like Treaty Oak Revival is a good way to describe us, I suppose. It was those guys asked me to join the band. We all two other members were playing at church with me, and they were having a tough time getting a electric player. So I was like, if you ever need me, I'll sit in because, I always want to play. So any chance I can get on stage, I'm going to take it. And they'd hit me up, and I mean, we just started playing, and one thing led to another, and then I became a full-time member in the band.
Nice.
Mr. Vance, our singer, he just had his first kid in October, so we took a little break. And now we're getting ready to get back out there and start playing again. Not nearly as crazy amount of shows as we did last year, because once you have kids in the picture, it's a little bit harder to play a bunch of gigs. Which
yes, it is.
It's all good, but it's
and also like it's harder, but also at our age, like I will say for me at my age, I appreciate the time at home with my family a lot more than I did when I was younger, and which I when I say younger, I mean I'm an old man, so
me too.
I mean, prior to 40, when I was still doing it, I think I was about 35 when I kind of like hung up the hardcore spurs. And I'd been doing it for so long. It's like, I'm ready to relax and take a break. And now we're going to have the baby. And yeah, it's like, it's one of those when after my son was born and I said I was done, like I didn't regret it at all. Like I still, don't get me wrong, I still love playing guitar. I still love getting together with friends doing the Ugly Tribe stuff, but I'm also like so okay with not being on the road every weekend, driving across the entire state and
Right.
playing for, 10, 20 people and getting home at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
I was going to say, for me, ever since I started playing music down here, it's always been a hectic schedule for me. I
yeah,
worked in ambulance for a million years before I got into nursing, nurse practitioner, all that other good stuff. And it would be like, I'd work a 24-hour shift and then have to go to Antone's and play a gig and then be back on the truck at 5 o'clock in the morning. Or like even last year, I'd work a 12 in the clinic and then I'm on stage at 9 o'clock at Dylan's. And then back to work the next morning. It's just drinking a lot of water with lemon instead of cold beers. So that was a big change out.
I can sympathize with that because, and again, this isn't something I've ever talked about on the podcast, but back in the Ugly Tribe days, now granted, I was like 20 to 21 years old in Ugly Tribe. So that's,
Right.
our bodies are almost, impervious at that age.
Mm-hmm.
We can do very terrible things and still just be okay. But, and again, living in Southeast Texas, right on the coast, I worked at a black oil fueling dock. The other guitar player, Shane, had helped me get the job there, and I was a dock hand. So basically, I was a peon, but I also had the responsibility of, you know, we had a tank on another dock in Louisiana, and it would pump this black oil to these huge ships that were, coming in, and the problem is that black oil, in order to be pumped, it has to be over like 100 degree, like right out 101, 102 degrees, something like that, to be like viscous enough
Sure.
to pump. So it was my job to drive to Louisiana and run a heater for this shore tank. So what I would do is I would get up in the morning, and in especially like during winter months, I was working like 80 hours a week. It was insane. I would get up and go to work 8 o'clock in the morning. I would get off at 5 in the afternoon, run home, take a shower, grab something to eat, go to band practice at 7, practice until 9, leave straight from band practice to drive to Louisiana to go to the other dock, and then run the heater all night long, and then finish up at like 5-ish the next afternoon, drive straight back to band practice from Louisiana to Southeast Texas. It's like, in my Nomex coveralls and everything, like straight from the tank, and then practice, get done at 9, get fast food on the way home, take a shower and go to bed, and then the next day do it all over again.
Yep.
So, I mean, I was making $5 an hour, but making $500 a week.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, and that's how I was still living at home, and I just made so much money. Like I was even getting mileage money driving back and forth to Louisiana. So I was basically living on the mileage money. And then I only had time to cash my check. I was getting paid every week, but I only had time to cash my checks like once a month. And then I go cash my checks and have like $2,000.
Right.
Oh, I guess I'll go buy a new guitar, So
Alto guitar and banjo.
yeah, that was how the whole guitar collecting insanity got started, was
Yeah.
living at home still. So not having rent and, just basically paying for my vehicle, and again, making so much money that just because I was working so much, and okay, well, sure, I'll go buy another guitar. Like, yeah, why not? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I can sympathize with your crazy clinic schedule there.
Well, man, it's just like for me, it's still just the excitement of going to play. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
like seeing, and it's different being in a cover band
yeah,
and doing primarily cover stuff versus the original stuff. Like going to Antone's and knowing that there's people there specifically to see your band at your time slot and all that stuff. That was awesome.
yeah,
Uh, when you're playing the cover gigs, it's almost like your background music to a lot of people who are eating crawfish a lot of
yeah,
times. But sometimes, some of the gigs we do, uh, people really dig it, man. They get out there and they start dancing and all that. And we do put a spin on a lot of covers. We do kind of make it our own, which is fun. Bringing a guy like me into the band, I come from a lot more of a punk, like hardcore, like rock kind of stuff.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
that's kind of like my tone is kind of around that, ironically. Um, so we kind of light it up a little bit different, which is just a lot of fun, and it just works.
yeah, yeah. Well, what is your guitar rig that you're running for your cover band?
Okay, so when I started playing in the band, I started with a Helix. This is June of last year, because primarily at
Okay.
that point I was playing guitar mainly at church, in worship, and everything goes front of house, silent stage, in ear monitors, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I had like a live cab that I ran, and I was like, oh man, dude, I'm playing in a band, and like 9 times out of 10, let me tell you this too. I end up playing drums in a band that I started playing guitar in. So this is the longest time I've ever been in a guitar, like playing guitar in a band that I haven't been sat to drums. We have a good drummer. He's
Nice.
really good. So that's thankful for Caden for that. But I'm just like, man, dude, like I've been in this band and we're 3 months in, and I haven't been swapped over to a different instrument yet. So I
Nice.
think I want to do pedals again, which means I need to get an amp.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, I want to get something that's not going to, kill people at Rick and Jack's or something like that. So I go out and get a 15-watt bass breaker Fender. That lasted 2 weeks. And then I was like, well, no, I want something fancier than that.
Yeah.
So I hit up Tim Burge on a trade. And I ended up with a Bad Cat 212 Hot Cat that
Yeah.
weighs about 190 pounds again. And then I trade that off for a deluxe reverb custom, which I liked it. I had some issues with it with noise and stuff, so I sent it over to Dan Moser, and he does all my amp work and stuff like that. Whenever I need something modded out, he recapped it, retubed it, and of course, here goes the Tone Quest, multiple drive pedals, multiple
Yeah.
delay,
Yeah.
all this stuff. Huge board. I ended up getting a Fillmore 50 at one point, which those are phenomenal amps. It's pretty good. And
Yeah.
then once my custom was done with Dan, that was my primary amp for a while. There was one problem with the amps though. No matter where we played, I was always too loud somehow, even with a
Yeah.
15-watt amp. Um, and then I mean, some of those amps they have a sweet spot where you start getting your tone out of the tubes. So I mean, I would be
Yeah.
on like 2 or 3, and just like it was too loud for
Yeah.
stage volume
Yeah.
for these places we were playing. So we played a gig at the Honky Tonk in Silsby, and that was my last gig with my tube amp because it was still like even for that room was somehow too loud for that room. So for me to get what I needed, I had to go back digital. So I like running the Helix because it's simple, and I'm not a very tech guy. I know like Kempers and all the other ones are cool, and but I never really got into that and like following
Yeah.
that. I like kind of a plug and play. So to answer your question, the amp I'm using on my Helix is
Yeah.
a Vox AC30 is my primary amp that I'm using right now,
Nice.
uh, which a lot of the
So
country guys use.
I was going to say, like, being a cover band, I was curious if you ever felt like you needed to, or maybe felt like it was easier to have something like the Helix so that you could have different guitar tones to kind of get closer to the original recording, but at the same time,
Yep.
if you're trying to do your own spin on everything, then it's easier to kind of find a tone and stick with that tone
Sure.
if you're putting your stamp on everything.
Yeah, and primarily, and that is correct. I do switch between three models throughout a 3 hour gig.
Yeah,
Some of the rockier stuff, we'll cover Pearl Jam and things like that. I'll go to I like the JCM stuff. That was like my amp in the '90s. I had a JCM 2000 DSL,
yeah,
was like my amp, and it was plugged directly straight into that. No tuner, wah, and go.
nice, nice.
And even in the early 2000s, when I started playing guitar down here, that was the first thing I bought was a JCM 2000 DSL as soon as I got to Texas. But I'll switch between that and I'll use a Fender Deluxe reverb still patch on there. And
Nice.
I get the tone match stuff. There's a website that a lot of the worship guys use called Worship Tutorials, and they build all this tone match patch stuff. And I mean, I think it's pretty close, man. And
Yeah, nice.
honestly, spending thousands and thousands of dollars just to go back to square one. I'm really happy being digital now because I mean I'm not dragging around heavy tube amps and a gigantic board anymore. So
That's my thing. And I've said before, if I was ever going to be like in a like a an active band before or a back let me start that over. If I was ever going to be like in a real active band again, um, if I was going to use a real amp, at most, I'm going to be using one of the lunchbox heads, like
yep,
my 5153 lunchbox.
yep,
Um, that amp sounds great, and like you're saying, it's even with the 15-watt amp, though. I mean, like when I do the Ugly Tribe thing, that's usually the amp I bring because it's light, it's really small, it's easy to pack and drag out there. But like I can't turn that thing up past 2 because it's
mm-hmm.
so loud. But if and like I said, I would use something like that if I was doing a real amp. But honestly, I don't know that I would even use a real amp these days. I might just get a modeler, get a simple in-ear setup going, and just have everything like in a 4, 5, 6 space rack, and that's my entire guitar rig. It's just I'll still always love using real tube amps when recording, but man, I'm an old man and I don't like carrying around heavy equipment anymore, and those days are long behind me.
Yeah. Yeah, don't ever buy a bad cat, dude.
Yeah,
The chassis is made of cinder blocks, so but they're
yeah,
great, man. They are phenomenal amps. If I never had to move it, it would have been awesome. Um,
yeah. Every amp's great until you have to move it.
that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, like I said, I even one of my videos when I can't remember which amp I was doing, but I was doing a video on one of the lunchbox heads, and I was like, it's like, man, I can lift this thing up with one finger. Like, you can't beat that. That's some real convenience.
Yeah, I have one tube amp that I have kept. I've got a little Supro Delta King, I think it is. It's a 12-inch speaker.
Yeah,
It's a cool little amp. I mean, I just like coming in here and I'll plug in and just go. It's got a dirty channel and clean channel, and that's all I need. So
yeah,
easier than setting up the Helix to the PA stuff.
yeah. Well, what is currently your number one guitar that you have in your collection right now?
My to play out or just like my most
Just
coveted thing I
if you
have.
like your desert island guitar, like right now.
Oh, that's my R9. It's a CME 60th anniversary that I got off my buddy James trades, and
Nice.
it's phenomenal, man. I mean, everything about it is just awesome. Second would be the R7, probably. It's light. It's a little bit above 8 pounds,
Oh wow.
which that's become a big deal for me too.
Yeah.
All the custom shop stuff back there is around 8 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
that's a big
I
deal.
was gonna say, it's kind of funny for me, just because as much as I'll like complain about having to carry a heavy amp, that kind of thing, like my number one, my all-time favorite guitar is still my 10.5 pound 79 Les Paul Standard. And it's weird, like, and you know, a lot of people don't like the weight of them, and that's totally fine. It's, you know, there's everything about guitars is subjective. I'm not one of those people that like this. I mean, not a Mandalorian thing. This is the way. Whatever works for you is the way.
Right,
But for whatever reason, as much as I'll like grumble and complain about carrying heavy cabinets, heavy amps, slinging a 10.5, 11 pound Les Paul over my shoulder just doesn't bother me. And
right,
I'm also the guy like jumping around like an idiot on stage too. So it's not like I'm just standing there. So, you know,
right.
so I always found that to be like a funny kind of juxtaposition that I hate heavy amps but love heavy guitars.
Yeah, man. I mean, I like you said with Jason. You guys were talking about it's a piece of wood. Like you can
Yeah,
take 50 of those CMEs that they made at the 60th anniversary, and every one of them is going to be different. That
yeah.
one's just one I really like. I had an '82 standard, lovingly nicknamed the Brick. It weighed 13 pounds.
Wow.
13 pounds, and it was my favorite Les Paul. It was played and like missing finish off the back, finish off the front. I regret getting rid of that guitar a lot. It was just one
Yeah,
of those, you know, you get, well, for me, I get into these moods where I'll flip it. I'll be like, hey, you know what? I think I want PRS stuff for a little while, and I'll get like 5 awesome PRSs. Then I'll flip those, and then I'll go back to Gibson, and then I'll get in the Fender custom shop stuff, and then it's always something. This is probably the longest I've been with something. It's probably because I'm playing out, and primarily I've just been loving on my Gibson stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I love that guitar, and if I still had the Brick, I probably would be playing it and complaining about my back, and my neck hurt.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's one of those things where, again, we're getting older, but we're also very set in our ways, and we like what we like, and you know,
Right?
our
Sure.
bodies are gonna hurt the next day, and
Yeah.
we don't recover quite as quickly as we used to. But that's all part of the fun of it, you know.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, man. Yeah, and you know, I guess like I used to love doing the pawn shop stuff, kind of like you do. And kind of like hunting around. Now down here, I've struck out as of late. Like there
Yeah,
really hasn't been anything that's been like phenomenally crazy that I'd want to snag right now. And but like for me, I love when I get a new guitar. Like as soon as I get it, I bring it home, set up my little workbench, and
yeah,
take it
yeah.
apart and clean and do all that stuff. Is that kind of how it is for you with the pawn shop stuff?
You know, I don't kind of. Well, I will say, as far as like the pawn shop, because I know, you know, I've talked to Bill, I've talked to Ethan, I've talked to Shelby, like, and I know that the pawn shop scene in Southeast Texas isn't quite what it is here in Austin. Um, the best analogy I can make is like what Chris Kyle said about being a sniper in the Middle East, and how he, you know, he had more confirmed kills than anybody else. Blah blah blah. I was like, well, you know, it was a target rich environment, and that's kind of the way the Austin pawn shop scene is. There's so many musicians here,
Yeah.
and as we all know, musicians are often people who might find themselves in dire financial straits for various reasons. And so lots of stuff ends up in pawn shops. So for me, it's a target rich environment. So I'm always finding stuff. But, you know, when I get something new, I don't generally like take it apart. I will look at something, and like sometimes I'll just leave it, like if it's how I want it, I don't touch it, you know. But I'm also, you know, I'm never afraid to, like, you know, for Gibsons, for example, I have a strong preference for Gibson speed knobs, like the big barrel speed knobs. I
Right.
don't really like the top hats. I don't like the witch hats. I like the big. So that's when I buy a Gibson. If it doesn't have speed knobs on it, that's like the first thing I do. Like I, you know, like day one, pull the knobs off and slap speed knobs on it. Um, if there's a particular guitar, like I have a 2014 SGJ that I got from a pawn shop last year, year before. I don't remember exactly when, but um, and I have to laugh because, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen the video I made for that guitar, but again, like a knob thing.
Right.
Whoever owned that guitar before me put four completely different knobs on it. Like no two knobs were the same. And
Mm-hmm.
so first thing I do is pull the knobs off, but then once and it's just like this chocolate brown guitar. But once I started looking at it, I was like, well, you know, it's got the black speed knobs, it's got a black toggle switch, it's got black pickups. You know, I bet it'd look pretty cool with black hardware.
Right.
So I've got a closet full of black hardware that I've ordered for it that, like, one of my soon coming videos will be swapping out all the hardware and blacking out everything. So it's like, it just kind of, for me, it depends from guitar to guitar. Like,
Right.
again, I might not touch it at all. I might completely gut it and rebuild it. Like, I've got another one that I just brought home a couple of days ago. And again, it was just like a random pawn shop find. I was like, you know, that's not like a bucket list guitar, but they're just not common. You don't see them. So that makes it just weird enough for me to want it. Cause like I like the weird stuff. I like, you know, I like the uncommon. And it's why, you know, I told Jason, and I've said before, like, when it comes to Les Pauls, my least favorite finishes are the Heritage Cherry Sunburst and Gold Tops, because everybody's got those. So
Right.
I like the weird stuff, like the Blueberry Burst, like the, you know, the green Les Pauls, the purple Les Paul. Like, I love just the off the wall stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, that guitar that I just brought home the other day, um, I haven't decided. I was on the fence about changing out hardware, but I'm probably going to completely replace the electronics, because and I'll talk more about it when it's time, but while it's a cool guitar and it's technically made in the USA, and that'll make more sense later, they weren't known for having particularly great electronics. So probably going to completely gut all the electronics and replace them. But, you know, that's a really, really long way to answer your question, and I apologize. But
Amen.
again, the short answer is, what I like to do with new guitars, it just wholly depends on the guitar, because again, I've only ever in my life bought 3 new guitars.
Right.
Like, everything else is just, and, and pretty much, I want to say, other than my 79 Les Paul Standard that I bought from Brian Jones, and the exception of like a couple of guitars that were given to me, or the guitars I inherited from my dad, like every guitar that I've bought, except for those 3 brand new guitars that the only new guitars I ever bought, like everything else. Well, since leaving Southeast Texas, and
Mm-hmm.
when I was still in Southeast Texas, it pretty much all came from guitar and banjo. But after, like, since coming to
Mm-hmm.
Austin, like, everything else comes from pawn shops. That's just, I'm just addicted to pawn shops.
Yeah. Well, I can see. I mean, if we had it like that down here, I'd probably be the same way, man.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
Now, I mean, I see. Like for me, it's like this. I don't want to sound weird and say it's like a ritualistic, but it kind of is a little bit. Like I'll get something, even like a guitar that I've had, like Beatrice. I've had that guitar 3 or 4 times now. I think this is the 4th time I've had it.
yeah,
Um, it's this weird thing. I bring them home, set up the workbench, strings get cut. Doesn't matter if they're fresh or not because I'm putting my strings on there. I need to put
yeah.
my strings, and then strap locks. But I always like to, I'll take the pickups out. I want to make sure and see if the pickups are stock or what I'm working with there. Fret polish, fretboard clean, all that stuff. Wipe it all down, set the
Yeah.
action how I like it. Which everyone's different. I could hand you one of my Gibsons right now, and you being a Gibson guy, you might think they play like crap. But everyone's different with how they like their action and all that stuff.
Yes.
So, but that's always been like my process with it. And then I will, I like to kind of like put my initials on the inside of the pickup cavities. So if you ever get a JP and a year on any of those guitars you bring in, it was probably one of mine.
There you go. There you go.
It's always been that way. In blue, my initials are burnt into it with a soldering iron in the I want to say, yep, in the spring area in the back here.
Oh, nice.
When I was a kid, because I immediately, I mean, I love changing electronics and making like the wiring harnesses and stuff like that for Gibson stuff. I used to love getting like the ones that had the boards, and that would be my first thing. Would be yank the board, make a 50 style harness, slap it in there with orange drops, or I go see Dan and get like legit like the bumblebees and change them out. But a good case in point for like buying a guitar like on Reverb, which some of my stuff has come off of Reverb, which is risky in itself. The Firebird back there, that's a 14, so it's one of the banner ones. It was sold as supposed to be stock, and when I got it, it came in UPS, and I was doing my ritualistic thing. I found out that it had Mojo Tone Johnny Winter pickups. So yeah, I messaged the guy. I'm like, it's not a big deal. It sounds okay, but it always kind of bothered me. So I got a custom.
If someone's going to advertise something as stock, it needs to be stock.
Yeah, absolutely. Normally I got a really good deal on it, so I was just like, I'm cool with it. One of the guitars I recently got was a Whitfield. I don't know if you ever heard of those.
I'm not familiar with those now.
He's a boutique builder, and I got it's based off of a 59 hardtail Strat. And it has custom Onomac pickups in it. It's a guy who he winds everything by hand and all that stuff. So I talked to him, and he ended up making me a custom set of Onomac pickups for my Firebird. I call them Lou Buckers after my Golden Doodle. And he engraved the Lou Bucker thing on the front of my pickup, which is kind of cool. And there's a hot set of Firebird pickups. I like most of my pickups to be in that 7/8. 8.3, 8.5 range for bridge, and I mean it met the mark, and that's why it's probably still here. So
I guess I do have one kind of like ritual kind of thing. I was listening to you. I like you. I put strap locks on everything. That's like. I have a couple of guitars that don't have them, but those are the guitars that don't get played a ton. Like I'm not going to put strap locks on my dad's 66 Gibson 05, stuff like that, which that guitar doesn't actually have a front strap button anyway. That's one of those old style, you put the strap button here and then you tie the strap around the nut on the other side. But, I A, strap locks on everything, but B, every guitar has its own strap. Period.
Yep.
Because and it's one of those things like you just, as you get older, you just learn things about yourself. That like you notice patterns and it just used to annoy the crap out of me to like where's my strap? Where's the strap? I need to, no, this one was on a Strat and I'm putting it on a Les Paul, so now I got to adjust it. And like, that always drove me nuts. So now every guitar gets its own strap and it's done. And I adjust it one time and I'm done. I never have to touch it again. It's on strap locks. We're done. So that if I had a ritual for every guitar, that's it. Strap locks and its own strap, Well,
you like odd shaped guitars like I do too, man. I mean, I went through, I love Firebirds. I love Explorers. I love Vs.
Yeah.
Jazz Masters are pretty cool. Uh, yeah, that's another thing, man. Like when I'm looking at something and like I decide like with the Jazz Master, I've had several Jazz Masters over the years, and it's like those Telecasters and SGs for me come and go the most. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'll be in a mood for one, and then I traded a Telecaster for the Jazz Master. But when I was getting it, I had a plan. A lot of the worship guys like the Mastery bridges. I'm not sure if you're aware, like kind of know like what the deal is with those.
And not no.
So on a 66 Jazz, or really any of them, most of them, they pivot. So the bridge will come down, and it's supposed to be set perfectly dead center. So how the
Yep.
trem works is the bridge. You hit the trem, the bridge goes like that.
Yeah.
So it's not really the strings as much as the bridge actually moving and getting you that effect. Bad for tuning. Someone who plays heavy, like me, that digs in, I can move that bridge with the palm of my hand as I'm playing. So mastery comes in with like a precision specific sleeve that you have to remove the old sleeves sometimes, and it'll fit right in there. I mean, and lock in. It's kind of like tone prosy kind of stuff for the Gibson stuff.
Yeah.
And it doesn't move anymore, but the saddles are so smooth to where it's actually operating like a legit trem. A lot of the guys who set those up, though, will slap a mastery in there and they're still having tuning issues. So when they made the Jazz Master, the whole idea behind it, I read, was that it was to compete in the jazz guitar arena. So like all like the old Gibson stuff, like if you look at even the 335, like the neck is kicked like this. So you've got a break angle that's coming this way, and then it drops down on the bridge. And all that tension is supposed to hit that bridge at a certain point, and that's what keeps everything kind of in tune and working the way it should.
Yeah.
So to get the proper neck angle on something like that it's set up like a vintage one where it doesn't have the micro tilt, you got to come in with a shim. So like I put like a 0.5 degree shim in there, and that thing is rock solid, does not go out of tune.
Nice.
And of course, I'm not happy with the pickup. So now we got to change pickups. I ended up slapping it's got a Lawler P90 for jazz. So it's a P90 pickup shaped for jazz, with a 5+ over one, because it has to sound like a Les Paul, even though it's a Jazz Master. So, and that's why it's still here.
Yep. Well, funny thing, again, talking about the jazz guitar world, because again, I have my dad's 66 Gibson L5.
Mm-hmm.
That guitar, and it's the only guitar I have that's like this. And again, it was a thing back in the old jazz days. That guitar, you have to replace one string at a time when you're restringing it, because the bridge isn't anchored down at all.
Yep.
It's a free floating. It just sits on the body, and string tension holds it in place. So like if you wanted to, you could just grab it and like shove it from side to side,
Yeah.
or do whatever. So I always found that kind of crazy that, and again, it's a classic jazz guitar. But I always thought it was like so super wild. It's like, because coming from the Les Paul world, where you got your post screws that go into the body, and like, oh, this, like as a teenager when I first realized it didn't have them, I was like, oh, but and like it didn't occur to me to only change one string at a time. Like, well, how do I change strings? Because like the whole thing's just gonna. How do I know I get it back in the right place, and the intonation, and it eventually dawned on me, oh, if I just replace one at a time, the bridge will stay in the same spot. And but yeah, that's again just like a goofy jazz guitar thing to relate there.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned, and I did this for a while and have gone back full circle. I know you mentioned you wanted to to hit on top wrapping
Oh
versus
yeah.
top wrapping.
Yep.
So when I first started playing, I didn't even know what top wrapping was, so I just did strings normally, and then I can't remember who. It may have been Brian Jones that told me about top wrap. Somebody told it, like it came up, and like, well, okay, I'll try. Again, being like my late teens, early 20s, like I, yeah, and like I think the only reason I did it more than once because I just thought it looked cool,
Mm-hmm.
Um, not that I ever really decided there was a benefit to it. And then I did it for years, and then just one day is like, I don't know why I'm still doing this. I'm going to stop doing it now, and I just went back to not top wrapping.
For me, yeah, I did the same thing, man. Like it's like I think I read like a Bonamassa interview or something like that, and he was doing it. And at that point, I think Bill had turned me on to using like super heavy strings. I was using 11s at one point,
Yeah,
on all the Les Pauls, and just to get it more slinky, I was like, man, that's the first time I did a top wrap on it. It was felt so nice, and for me, I never, and I know you can raise the stop tail on a Gibson to get your break angle right. Like I get that, and I guarantee you probably feels exactly the same.
yeah,
I deck all my tail pieces. I just have to. I don't know why, but it has to be decked. I know it's not right, but it's my guitar, and that's what I want to do. So, uh,
yeah.
yeah. So like on the SG, the one that you did the review on, that one to me, for me to deck it, that break angle was so hard on it that I had to do a top wrap on that to make it,
Yeah.
feel that way and kind of play nice. Same thing with the Firebird is top wrap. None of the Les Pauls or the 335 are, but I don't know if it's because those are reissues. I never had an issue with that break angle of that E string just cranked into the bridge.
Yeah.
That I do like with that SG. The first time I set it up, it was just like you either had to raise that stop tail or do the top wrap to get the right angle.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that Bill got you using really heavy strings for a while, and I mean that's when I was top wrapping. I was, we were tuned down to like drop C or drop C flat, and I was playing 12s or 13s,
Yep.
So it was similar. Like I was playing super thick string, like the G string, like it was like the thickest plain G string you could even get
Right.
anywhere from anyone, and it was kind of beastly to try and bend, but again, eventually I just like I'm going back to normal stringing, and I'm going back to a semi-normal tuning. I don't.
Mhm.
These days I stay pretty much at E flat / drop D flat, and my general rule of thumb is tens on a 24 3/4 scale and nines on a 25.5 inch scale. The only real exception to that is I have my ESP E2 Eclipse, which is 24 3/4 scale. I have nines on it because for whatever reason, with tens, the string tension just, even though it's the same scale, it just the tension felt higher than it does on
Right.
my normal Les Pauls, and I wanted it closer to the way my Les Pauls felt. So
Yeah. 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 Even if it's not a Les Paul, it's got to be a Les Paul, man. It's just
well, for me again, I'm old, man. I
yeah.
don't. That's why I used to tell Bill all the time. Is like because he was still playing 11s. Like, dude, I love you, buddy, but you're working too hard. You don't need to work that hard, man. Go with some lighter strings. You don't need to put 11s and 12s and E standard tuning. That's just, you're working too hard, man.
Yeah.
I think he's down to like 10 and a halfs, like the 10.5 set
Yeah.
now. But one of these days I'll get him to see the light and drop down to tens on a 24 3/4 scale.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think I pretty much use tens on most everything I have right now. The Jazzmaster has a set of 11s on it, and that's just comes down to that tension on the bridge thing again. It just feels right because of how long of a run the strings are on it to go all the way down to the whammy on it. Have you had much experience with the with Gretsch stuff or like things that are Bigsby loaded or anything?
I mean, over the years I've played a few Gretches here and there. Like I've never owned one. I've never spent considerable time with one. I dig them. I just you just don't see them much in pawn shops, so I've never bought one.
Yeah, man. For me, like once I started playing in church and doing the worship guitar thing, I got into Duesenbergs for a minute, which I don't know if you've ever had a chance to mess with those. Those are great guitars, man. You talk about precision. They got it right with how they kind of made their version of a Bigsby and how they string through the tail versus having to kind of grab onto one of the little things that stick out to grab the ball in, because stringing on Bigsby is a pain in the butt on those. And I was kind of turned off a little bit, like getting an import guitar. Like everything I've ever had, predominantly, short of like Mexican made or whatever Fender, has always been like USA stuff. So when I had the opportunity to get the Gretsch behind me there, I always wanted a Champagne Sparkle one, and it's basically a Les Paul, but it's a Gretsch, and it's awesome, jangly, and does all the stuff for worship guitar and all that. But it's Japanese made, and I ended up doing a trade. I had a Duesenberg that I traded for that one, and it's phenomenal guitar, man. Like when I got it in, and for the ritual, we took it apart, and it's so clean. Like the routes are so clean, and there's no like buffing compound in there or splintered stuff, and not so much on the Gibson custom shops, but I mean I'm sure you've seen on plenty of the Gibsons over the year, or even Fender stuff is just like caked with compound and everything else on the inside. It was just like surgical. And it reminds me kind of Duesenberg with how just everything's just right. Like everything's precise and precision made, and just stays in tune perfectly. Even
Japan.
Yeah.
Man, Japanese guitars are nice. They really are. I've never played a bad Japanese made guitar. They really are nice.
Oh yeah, like I want to say I had a Jackson that was like a Super Strat that might have been, I don't know. It was an import of some kind, but it was a higher end one. It was great guitar. It's just, I don't know, for me it just took a while to kind of get out of my headspace of playing an import guitar versus an American one.
I hear you. I went through a lot of that when I was younger. And I'll say it's one of the things that I've actually been really grateful for with starting the podcast is I borrowed so many South Korean made guitars from Ethan and Shelby. Like it's really opened my eyes to just how far these import guitars have come, since I was a teenager and they were kind of cheap, crappy guitars.
Sure.
Some of them are really, really nice now. And we got import guitars that are, $1,500, $2,000 now, but they're worth every penny.
Right.
So
yeah. I was watching another podcast, and they were talking about the new Epiphone stuff versus like the regular standard Gibson stuff. It's pretty equivalent. Like even the headstock it's a Gibson shape now, and it's just crazy, man. I mean, I used to think that like having just get the nicest guitar you can have, and you're going to sound pretty decent. But to me, I think it's a lot more in your hands than anything. I was joking around and playing some Hendrix on my daughter's Hello Kitty Strat Squire that she has, and it sounded like me on my Whitfield. Like, I mean, it's just one of those things. I think it's your attack and your technique, really, more than anything.
And there's always that whole discussion, like, where's tone really? Is it really in the hands? Is it, can two guitar players play the same thing and sound the same? So here's my take on that. I don't think it's quote unquote tone that's in the hands, because if you take two very identifiable guitarists with very diverse styles, if they play on the same rig and do nothing but hit the open E, you're not going to know who's who.
Right.
Not so much tone. What I think what people really mean when they say tone is in the hands, it's really more of a style thing.
Yeah.
The things that make you, the things that make me, the things that made Eddie Van Halen. It's not that Eddie Van Halen could plug into any guitar and any amp and sound like Eddie Van Halen per se, that exact brown sound tone. What people mean is he sounds like Eddie Van Halen no matter what he plays, because he's like, it's just his personality. It's him coming through. So the tone is going to vary, but the little nuances that separate, because it's the same thing we were talking about earlier, which you mentioned that I talked to Jason about. Like you take 50 guitars that came off the same assembly line and plug them on, they're all going to have their own slight variations, their slight tonal differences. Same thing with guitar players. You take 50 guitar players, here's a riff, play it. It'll basically sound the same, but everybody's going to have their tiny little nuances, that's their little idiosyncrasies that are just them, that are going to just kind of their little thing that's going to stand out a little bit. So I've always, I guess one of those things I've always kind of thought about, but never until now had the opportunity to, like, well, here's my opinion on the topic. So like I said, I agree. It is us that makes the sound, but it's slightly different than saying that tone is in the hand. It's more of the things that makes us identifiable as us. Those things are in the hand.
Right.
So
yeah, I buy that.
Not that anybody asked me what my opinion was on the matter, but
I
that's
kind
what
of
it is. And that is it for the first half of this podcast episode. Please check back soon to see part 2 when it gets posted in a couple of weeks.
Babe?
Yes?
Is there a guitar under my bed?
Yes.
Why is there a guitar under my bed?
Because I ran out of room in the closet?
Whatever.